Hello everyone, welcome to the next panel. Our previous panel ran a little long. It was an interesting topic on inclusion and diversion, but welcome to the next panel. I'm Armando Ruiz with NCR. I lead our global telecom organization, and we're very proud to be the sponsors of these breakout sessions and look at some of these important topics. I'm a member of the Culture Council at NCR and the CIO Council, and manage also the awards program. So we believe a lot of these topics are really relevant for the community here. So we're very proud to sponsor this panel. So glad that everyone can make it. And I'm going to turn the microphone to our moderator, Jim here. Thank you.
My name is Jim Everidge, CEO of Rapid Learning Deployment. We are a systems integrator in the learning and talent industry. We do about 60 to 80 projects a year with customers all over the world. And so we have a lot of exposure to the technology that we're going to talk about today. I've got three people on the panel with me. I'm going to pass it over to Stephen and let him give a little bit about his background.
Hey, Stephen Giles. I'm the CHRO for Panasonic Automotive. We're a $3 billion division at Panasonic, headquartered out of Peachtree City. We have about 9,500 people in about 15 different locations. I've been with them for about 21 years.
Hi, good morning. Shannon Benham. I'm Director of Global Talent Development at UPS, world's largest transportation company, 480,000 people in 220 countries and territories. Thanks for being here. Thanks for coming.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Whipple. I'm the Vice President of Talent with Ferguson Enterprises. We're a large wholesaler of plumbing and lighting and HVAC. We're based in Newport News, Virginia, 30,000 associates, $20 billion business. I've been in this talent space for pretty much most of my career, and glad to be here this morning.
So as we get started talking about the future workforce, depending on innovation, I'm going to move fairly quickly through some slides, and I've got some questions for the panelists here. I'm going to send you a slide deck if you want. You can send me a note at info@rapidld.com and just put in conference slides, and I'll send those to you. So you don't have to try to write down all the things I've got in there. So on the very next slide, there we go. We've got the panel up here. We're really, this conversation starts off about employee engagement. And I think, the interesting thing is that we all recognize that there's a problem, but Gallup in 2013 really hit home with a point here, which is, as Jim. So I'll keep talking. I'll keep talking.
Oh, now it's going to.
Yeah, that's me. My first mistake was giving Jeff the navigation tool.
It's still doing it. I'm not
Okay, all right. Yeah, we'll just do it manually. That's easy. Just hit escape.
This is a technology event, right?
All right, so employee engagement is kind of where we're going to get started. And as I indicated, Gallup did a survey in 2013 and really identified the scope of the problem. Worldwide, only 13% of employees are engaged in their job. That's an abysmal number. And even worse, they found 30% of the employees were toxically disengaged. So they're actively working against the company. So that's a significant problem that we have today. And I think the opportunity, though, is if we can fix that problem, the increase in performance at the individual and at the team level is pretty significant. So I think that's where the opportunity lies. We're here to talk about, though, employee development and engagement in employee development. And so what's the connection between the two? On the very next slide, if we go there, we'll find that the second most significant driver of employee engagement is career development. And a researcher by the name of Bob Nelson identifies that as learning, development, and advancement opportunities that are provided to employees on a systematic basis with support of their manager. So the manager's helping the employee move through their career development process and identifying the next steps in their career. That's the second most important thing to getting people engaged in their jobs. In this particular slide, Bob has some tips for career development, as you'll see on the bottom. I think that to get to engagement, though, in development, we've really got to make learning personalized. And so when you think about personalized learning on the next slide, whoever's helping me with the slides there, with personalized learning, we sometimes call that adaptive learning, where we customize learning experiences based on challenges on the job, career aspirations, and personal preference. That's an important thing to consider, but it doesn't have to be based on technology. There's a lot of simple things that we can do to personalize learning for people. We can develop personalized learning paths based on job roles. We can do diagnostic assessments. We can have recommendations from peers or even personal preference. People just check off and say, here are the things that I'm interested in developing. Josh Burson is an analyst in this industry, and one of the things that he notes is that once you get to personalized learning and you're able to customize these experiences for employees, you can also do it by the job. And you can embed this learning in the flow of work. So that's become kind of a mantra over the last 4 or 5 years, is embedding learning in the flow of work so that you're not going to a place to learn, that you're in your daily job and you can call up learning assets right then to help you with whatever task that's right in front of you. On the next slide, we talk about technologies. Artificial intelligence and machine learning are probably the two things that we've seen the most of in the learning industry. Those things have been around. There's dozens of platforms that embrace those technologies today. One of the things that we overlook, though, is when you combine those two and you apply it to the content problem. And I would tell you that today, with the pace of change in work, that we have a content velocity problem. We can't get content to the learner fast enough. And that when you apply these technologies to the content problem, you can get self-authoring, which is a very interesting concept where the systems now are creating the content necessary for employee development. At the bottom of this slide, we see a lot of ways that employees will see these technologies. First and foremost, usually in some kind of social medium or social tool that they're engaged with. All those tools have artificial intelligence, machine learning built in by and large. They get personalized content. They get relevant user-generated content. So a lot of user-generated content being generated, but only the relevant content being supplied to the employee. That's important. And a YouTube-like interface. Next slide has a lot of benefits of the artificial intelligence and machine learning. I think the two most important ones here are this concept on the left side, bottom left, of reinforcing training, which is really what I call the mastery loop. The system continues to assess what you know, what you don't know, provides you the remedial content based on what you don't know until you learn it all. So it's a very interesting concept. And on the right-hand side, the second one, building content at scale. So I've mentioned the auto-generated content, but also having these systems go out and find content, source content, curate content for you. So it helps solve this problem of the learning organization being responsible for building everything. The last slide I've got here is just to kind of give you perspective that these technologies rarely exist as a sole technology. What I've got here is an example of a learning ecosystem for learning experience. And you start with the learning experience platform, you've got micro-learning, you've got social collaboration tools, you've got content, you've got skills cloud, you've got program experience and delivery, and you've got analytics. Many of these separate applications that are all blended together as one platform for the employee and their learning experience. So, enough of kind of the theory or setting the stage for this. Let's talk to the panelists about how they see engagement, employee development, engagement in the workplace, how they see personalization, and how they see these technologies. So, Jeff, I'm going to start with you for the first question. What challenges with learner engagement are you seeing at Ferguson?
So to get at that, the first thing we did was tackle the associate engagement question right off the bat. I joined the company 2 years. They've been asking themselves their own set of questions, getting their own set of results, and saying, hey, look how good we are. We recently introduced external benchmarks, global benchmarks, regional benchmarks, to find out that we are not all of that. We are somewhere in the middle of the road, and that learning is at the key. Learning and career development are the key outcomes comes from the associates telling us we need to understand more about what skills we need to develop, what behaviors we need to change to make ourselves viable for the next role in our career development journey. So then the challenge becomes, how do we get to solving that problem? As Jim teed up, the personalized learning approach is where we're going to go first, to make sure that we're finding development that's relevant to not only their current job, but the next step in their long-term career journey, and aligning that to the overall career path model that we're now building out. So we're starting from truly a greenfield or blue sky or whatever color that you want to use for a 67-year-old company to have none of this in place today. We are actually building from the ground up all of these different types of programs and processes to support the entire associate life cycle and help them grow and develop in their career so that we can be competitive at retaining our talent in this very competitive environment.
Jeff, thank you. Shannon, what about UPS?
Well, first off, your first slide, I really can't emphasize that enough about employee engagement. For us, the biggest thing is fit. Are you picking folks that actually believe in what you do, like who they work with, feel they are heard and have an active response, and you're constantly assessing them, okay? That's a really big deal because from the start, I think that engagement statistic speaks for itself. So in our culture, we have a big leadership framework, and we update it. In our heart of who we choose, who we promote, who actually survives but thrives, okay, and that's where you get into management potential of, do you have people who actually build capability, meaning not only are they learners in their heart and they embrace it and they walk their own talk, but they also build a whole ecosystem similar to this, and we're in various stages of this, okay, with their own people and their team. And the problem is when, we have 480,000 people, and you're in just a variety of industries. So how do you do that with some common core and common framework that everyone believes in, rallies around, you have a purpose, and then they see themselves reflected, and then you have that constant touch point. So we do assess, we do have time issues, because by nature, you know what we do. They're probably at your front door, possibly right now, okay? With that, these are people on the run, okay? Literally. So we do believe in the 70-20-10 model. With that, when you're delivering something from point A to B, an equipment, aircraft, or your feet, or whatever, in many cases, we have this enormous spine of $1 billion of technology investment every single year. That bleeds over to the learner. So they tell us what they need, we listen. Many cases, there's an avalanche of training. So I do believe the manager helps personalize that quite a bit, and if without that, you're really lost. Because if you don't know where you're destined to go and have a voice in this, your manager can't help you. But that is kind of the key for us, is both our team and understanding who you are and your purpose, and then also constantly have those feedback channels, just like he was saying.
Great, thank you. Stephen, let's talk about Panasonic Automotive. Have you developed any specific strategies to deal with learner engagement?
Yeah, I'll talk about three. One very specific to the research that you were just showing that Josh was mentioning, Josh Person was mentioning, about getting your leaders engaged and helping personalize that training for their employees. Very similar to Shannon, most of our training development is very much tied and pointed directly at our culture model. And so what we've done, even from a performance management standpoint, is we basically got rid of all of our rating scales and we turned it into these check-ins. And it's all about the conversation. We have that plastered on our wall in our material. The idea is the managers, employees have conversations at levels they've never had before. A lot of those around their personal development, not only training at work, but we have two questions that we built in for every one of our leaders. And one of those questions are, as your boss, what are two things that I can do to help you with things outside of work that you want to get done? And we built that in just this past year as a way to develop the whole person, not just specifically look at the things they need to develop from a technical or a leadership perspective. So that's been very helpful, getting the managers engaged and having those conversations on a regular basis. So you can tell real quick, did you do what you said you were going to do last quarter? So you can have a lot of those conversations. The other thing that we've done, maybe not so fun, is we've implemented for compliance training, everything's tied to your merit and bonus. So if you have compliance training, who loves compliance training, by the way? Everybody loves compliance training? See, that's the reason we tied it to your merit and bonus. if we tie all these trainings that you just have to get done from a compliance standpoint to your merit and bonus, do you think we had anybody last year that didn't complete and wasn't fully engaged in our compliance training? No, everybody was fully engaged. The other thing that we did was we created this Teach to Learn program for our high potentials. So we wanted to engage our high potentials, the people that we wanted to retain the most, and they become our teachers. So they have to pick, through our curriculum, things to actually go and learn and then teach. And it solves multiple purposes. We get a bigger training and development team. Second, when you teach it, you learn so much more than when you're listening to it. And it really drives that engagement. So it's pretty powerful.
Great strategies. Jeff, anything to add from Ferguson's perspective?
So ditto to both everything Stephen and Shannon said. We're doing much of the very same, but I'm going to latch on to two different areas that Stephen mentioned. First, on the compliance side, we have a lot of warehouse and branch associates hourly. Much like with UPS, it's difficult to get them out of the field. They're always going, they're delivering, they're picking, pulling, and shipping. So if we're going to make safety first, which is a cultural attribute, and we really got to train people on the dangers of a pipe yard or the dangers of a warehouse, we had to make sure that we gave an immersive, engaging experience to the compliance training for the very same reason of who loves compliance training. So we introduced the virtual reality headset so that we could plop somebody right in the middle of a pipe yard or right in the middle of a warehouse, and we can demonstrate the dangers of the work environment. Plus, we added the notion of having sound in your VR headset so that you could hear the mindset of an associate, of a manager when they're delivering the do's and don'ts. What are they thinking when they're hearing the instructions? So we found that to be very engaging. We're starting to see the measurement on the safety side continue to improve by using that technology, and people find it's time well spent outside of their job. And then secondarily, for us, it's the managers. We have never done anything to develop our managers. 67 years of execute. Just go do, let me show you how to do. And we've got to get them to the point where they can have that meaningful, here are two things, tell me two things I can do for you. Here's a development plan. Here's a career development plan. All of these things have never been available to them in their hip pocket. So how do we introduce that and then give them a support system with each other? 1,500 locations, they don't know each other, they don't have a resource group to call, and when we bring them in for their first immersion of a cohort program, we create that network that they self-manage and share best practice. And we're seeing the uptake already in our pulse surveys around associate engagement tied to my manager now is starting to help me with my own development plan.
Nice. Shannon, in what ways does UPS support a culture of learning?
Perfect. Same thing. We all have a lot of the same strengths, by the way, so I applaud my panel already here. The one thing that we do is, again, this is a company of engineers, okay? So everything for us is based on time. Everything for us is based on execution. Thoughtfulness and reflection when you are driving a large vehicle and aircraft doesn't come to the top of the mind, and we force that issue in some cases. Some of it's by choosing the right people, just like he said. In many cases, we force the issue by engineering the process. And what I mean by that is we ask you, and over 90,000 to about 150,000 every year, we ask you every year what you want to do when you grow up, what do you want to do your next job, what are all the data inputs that are everything special and relevant about you, okay? We have assessments on how you feel about the culture, where you sit in it. We have assessments on with your employees so that it is indeed a shared purpose for you and your manager, for you and your career. We have, fortunately, some good numbers out of it because we have very, very, very low turnover. I've been there 25 years, and in some cases have had jobs and pass-throughs through a process that we call talent reviews. And what I mean by that is every single year we make your management team and the layers going up and up and up talk about you. Okay? We gather in a room, a lot of things get done, but the primary purpose is to say, are they in? Are they out? How are they doing? What's next? How long? And how's it going? Okay? After that, you get a tremendous amount of momentum in your career, in your life. And typically, you're choosing this because we all know all this data every single year. And that is whether you want to move, whether you have something you don't want to move right now, because maybe you have a senior in high school. Okay? Things like that. That you take up a language. Okay? So things like this, we just engineered the process. And in time is money type of Wall Street expectations, we firmly still dig into this because it's not hard, and from both perpetuating that culture of learning, the manager accountability, okay? And also what happens is everyone gets to see you. So think about it, if you don't have great chemistry with your manager, whole room is there to speak on your behalf or to add more things to talk about. We also discover things that might not be your best fit at the moment. There's a lot of jobs at UPS. Perhaps there's another one for the person sitting next to your manager, okay? So long story short, that's a tradition for us for decades. It's worked, and because what comes out of it is a career path. So that's really our traditions and our engineered process.
And one that's been around for a long time.
Oh, a long time,
Yeah.
113 years.
I'm going to skip over to personalization, so changing the theme of the questions a little bit. Stephen, I'm coming to you. Do you have any company initiatives targeted to personalization of learning?
Yeah, and just to maybe talk about two of those. One very specific to the way we manage our learning management system. So when we initially launched our learning management system, which is Cornerstone, we launched it. Here you go, a lot of training classes in there. Go find what you need, personalize your own training. The engagement level was really low. So we had to go, okay, we got to do something different than that. That didn't work. Failing forward, we decided we're going to kind of relaunch our learning management system, and we did it in a way where we created playlists. So we created this playlist very specific to functions. So if you're an engineer, embedded software engineer, we have a playlist specific for Android software development. We have a playlist very specific to emerging leaders, senior leaders, and a lot of these trainings are very what we call scaffolding training. You take these training and these playlists that you take before you actually go into a classroom training. So you're learning and you're scaling that learning as you go, but they're very specific to individual learning capabilities and even the products that you work on. In some cases, the customer that you work on, very specific to the customer that you work on. The second thing we did, we created this Lunch and Learn series, not by high potential leaders, but by high performers. And we take our subject matter expert in so many different areas, and they basically do lunch and learns. And they do a series of lunch and learns. So it doesn't matter if you want to be a Lean Six Sigma expert. It doesn't matter if you're an accountant and you're really looking at very specific accounting skill sets. All of these lunch and learns occur that are very targeted and specific.
Great, thank you. Jeff, anything to add personalization strategies at Ferguson?
Yeah, I'll add one more. So what we're really teeing up now is to move to a learning experience platform, an LXP. It's a content curation tool. So essentially it sits on top of your LMS. Any external and other internal data sources or learning elements that we can plug in that eventually then apply some machine learning that determines what you would want to take or what you might be interested in or what peers associated with you are taking, reading, and curating for themselves today. To make it even more valuable than just the workplace learning experience, we also have a lot of hourly and lower paid sounds terrible, but labor jobs where their families struggle with basic life skills. We all know that in the world today, high schools we're not balancing checkbooks like we used to, we're not cooking things like we used to, or sewing things, or shop class. So somehow, some way, people have to get these life skills. And we're trying to take it upon ourselves as part of our culture and dedication to associates, is to start curating content that not just you, the associate, but your spouse or your parent can take to help you with personal finance, caring for elderly or the sick or your children, so that we can provide some of that content. The LXP is the vehicle that enables people to minimize the clicks to get to the content that they need. We have to maximize their personal time and make them want to come learn because they're hourly. And their managers are like, do. So, we'll get some time to pay for compliance training because you're required to, but we're trying to engage the learners so they come on their own time and benefit their own career and their own skill set and now their families.
Can I take some of those life skills classes? So tell me about the cooking one.
I'm going to skip a question here. So Shannon, it's coming to you, so it's good that you have the microphone. Do you have a content curation strategy? If so, who manages it, and what are the challenges that it brings?
That's a really good one. So first off, content curation tends to be this mystery. Okay, for us, you have to keep it simple. And the reason why is in order to do the justification, because many times content requires funding or maintenance, okay? We all have that favorite meeting you go in where you have to say, is this business critical and why? Is it a government telling us you just have to pull out, okay? And then from a ROI, sometimes it's, hey, we're staying compliant, or in many cases for us, there's this kind of spectrum of what is the yield out of this? So if you don't have that really well researched, you're out of luck right from the beginning. You just can't. Then you don't understand the purpose and the value, okay? You have to articulate that. Secondly, who else is in the boat with you on this one? Because we have, we tend to own this central strategy here in human resources for the learning department, the talent management department. However, we've had a tremendous amount of field-based or business-based learning leaders that we bring together. And the reason why is because we might have the foundation on some of these things, but what the airline needs versus what the sales group needs, how to teach it, and what the the outcomes have to be very, very, very different. So we bring them together and try to ask them, learn from each other, share, and then make sure consistency-wise that we're all kind of moving together. That's really important because most of the time, your people who are the experts on these, you don't know. You have to, however, become this big networking nucleus and make sure that everything, material and outcomes, the same, but how they put their style on it is very, very different, and I think that's important to recognize.
It's very tough to get that collaboration, too,
Oh my
among
God.
the teams.
Everyone's busy.
Stephen, anything to add on curation?
I'm Steve. No. Yeah, for us, I think when we started this, it sort of goes to what Shannon was talking about. We went too far. We had too many classes. It was too complicated, and we had to actually scale back. And a lot of this training was being generated and the content was being created from an HR perspective. We completely changed that. So now I'm a CHRO that has 0 HR initiatives. We do it as a team, and a lot of the content creation now is coming from the business. And as you heard me mention, a lot of the delivery now is coming from the business. So when you want to get engagement out of your people, have a training class that not only is created by the business, delivered by the business, for the business. It's a whole different level of engagement from your employee base. But we scaled down that content creation so it's not mind-blowing. Second, it's very specific to what you work on.
And very important, that last piece being very specific. We're going to switch gears and go over to technology that's being used in driving learner engagement. Jeff's already answered this question because they're putting in their own learner experience platform, which is very specific to these technologies. Stephen, what about Panasonic? Are you guys using any artificial intelligence or machine learning in your people development process?
Yeah, we're not yet, but that's the reason I was wanting to take notes here for what he's trying to add on to the LMS. Yeah, so I'm going to talk to you later, Jeff, about how that works. But right now we're not. We're trying to keep it very simple. We're trying to get the employees engaged to, again, pick the right training, work with their boss to make sure that they're following up and that there's a lot of conversations around the training and how it's applied. That's one of the bigger pieces of this, is what do you do and then how do you apply it to your job very quickly. But yeah, very interested in see how we can apply AI in the future.
So the next question is really about kind of social collaborative learning. That's a newer facet of people development. Stephen, you guys have any initiatives in play at Panasonic about social collaborative learning? And most importantly, are you finding value in that process?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. And this, what we're doing right now is actually taking place. It's been taking place over the last 2 months. And it is actually because we engage our business. This idea was actually created by one of our directors in quality. Anybody have heard of Gemba Academy? So Lean Six Sigma problem solving. So we have created, he's created this Gemba theater. And originally he created it for his team. And the idea was we're going to go through this Gemba Academy and these modules together. So that way we're having conversations, we're talking about how we're applying it, what that means to the business, but then he expanded it out to every one of our business units. So now he's truly created a Gemba theater where we have people from almost every single group to include when you talk about bringing people from IT and HR and accounting into these problem-solving classes to apply to their business, that's a game changer for us. And we literally do it in the theater. We have a popcorn machine, we have candy and sodas, we have a soda machine, so we created this true Gemba theater. And the learning is great, because that's a very valuable part of this. The part that I don't know that they expected was this collaboration and how people started working really well together, people meeting people that they didn't work with on a daily basis. I would say that's the number one benefit of this, is really now how people get out of their silos and work closer together because they know each other.
That's pretty cool. Shannon, you got to top that.
Well, I tell you what, there's no way to top that, especially with popcorn involved. But the one thing that we have found from a programming standpoint is what we call action learning. So title-wise, this appeals to our groups quite a bit because we're action-type people. The one thing we started to do is identify our high potentials, put them on business-related projects all around the world, and some of these folks will never meet each other because they are very, very, very far apart. Put them in virtual and then bring them together a couple times a year to solve a business problem. They have mandatory meetings once a month. They have a very structured discipline process so we can teach them both rigor of analysis, but they also get access with their solutions to the absolute top leaders for their continent or their business unit. The good parts that have come out is, that social piece, you cannot underestimate how important it is to bring this group together, because that storming, forming, norming, long story short, they have a common purpose. There's a lot of business deliverables that come out of this thing. We have made a bunch of fantastic suggestions that have absolutely hit the bottom line in some cases, because you ask the people who know it the best. But for me, from an HR standpoint, engineering that process, you now get access and something tangible to see your best and brightest in the fray. Okay? They get pressure, they have to present and defend. And when it comes down to it, there's no joke that these folks mostly, it's like finishing school before they hit the main stage in some cases. It's fantastic. So the recognition piece that comes out is a benefit that you can't overlook.
Well, I will say that taking suggestions and dropping them all the way to the bottom line is a good way to top what Stephen was saying. All right, Shannon, this one's for you. Many organizations are pursuing a one-stop shop portal approach to their learning technology ecosystem. Do you think this is smart? If so, why? And what should the entry point look like?
So first off, this is a really good topic, and the reason why is I think it's inherent just in all industries right now. There's so much, and you need a GPS to figure out what is relevant and how not to overwhelm your folks, okay? So I think this concept sounds great. We're struggling with it, frankly, because we have multiple delivery systems with learning management systems. In some cases, you've got very, very specific compliance or governmental regulations you have to work through with it. It's like the unicorn of concepts, okay? We would love it. For us, the personalization between the manager being that GPS, meaning the GPS, you have to guide them on the ultimate destination, yet keep your business going properly. That's a really big deal. So, I'd say that we're probably midstream on being able to do that. Still looking to learn how to do it better, which is part of the reason I'm here. But it's a complicated process when you get into the layers of people, jobs, businesses you have in your industry.
And systems.
Yeah, and it changes every 2 years. How do you keep up?
Jeff, anything to add to that?
We struggle with it too, because we're trying to change behavior. So we learned this with LMSs. Traditionally, we can say, here it is, go find it, go out there, and you can find your content. That didn't work. I think the LXP is the next best thing going for us, best opportunity, because it allows us our content to sit in different places, so that if there are people who go to your intranet, your core intranet, search for something, we can deep link back to that learning and have them steered back to the LXP or vice versa. So we are trying to solve for that. It certainly makes it easier to market towards a one-stop shop, but again, we're going to have to find a technology solution to it, and not just here's a website, go to it. We're going to have something that's a little bit more easy to navigate, and I really keep coming back to this LXP because I do believe this is the way to go.
Well, and therefore you're leveraging technology to try to address all those different constituencies, because you've got a lot of different learner styles, and can technology support that is the question. All right, so those are the planned questions. We've got a few extra minutes. I did cut off a few of those to try to get us to the end point. So if you've got some questions about this whole issue, technology and people development, personalization, employee engagement and development, let's hear it right now, and we'll entertain those.
So I'm very interested in machine learning and AI, and I'm curious how you guys implement it into your HR systems. And I heard LSP was mentioned earlier and how machine learning was in it. So I'm curious what the ML is doing when it comes to predicting and stuff like that.
So the question is how is machine learning and artificial intelligence being used in HR systems today? Anybody want to?
Yeah, I'll take a quick stab. So, two-headed answer to it. The first is we're using machine learning first in our accounts payable so that the system can learn how quickly to behave and get money moving, right? Now, what that means to the learner is then the finance people have to figure out how to do higher value work. So I no longer have to push buttons and facilitate this fixed process. I now have to learn from the new machine learning, which is learning from the process to optimize performance. Now I have to do the same for me, and we have to then teach as a result of the machine learning of the technology supporting their job. How do I then do something that's a higher value contribution to the organization? In the HR side, we're looking at it, and there's 7 different applications for it, but the problem is there's also a counterpoint to doing it. So if we're looking at it to improve our recruiting process, to help us find the right candidates for the right role, and then automatically parse those out who aren't qualified for this role, but as you were talking about earlier, into another role where you're a better fit, how do we do that without eliminating the personal touch and the personal appearance? The same thing goes for performance management in the moment. We want to have a personal, experience, manager to associate, but we'd like the system to be able to capture feedback and be able to provide feedback back based on the data that's coming in, but we don't want to remove the personal approach. So we still have to work through point counterpoint. Lastly, we love WalkMe as a performance support system embedded into technology, which also changes the way your process works in a software application so that we learn from people's learning. If they're hung up in these particular areas, then they have 5 different ways they can go teach themselves. It's personalized, back to that. And if we see it's a process workflow kink in the hose, we can fix it, change the process to make it more streamlined to improve the experience for people using the tool. Sorry, that's a fast answer.
Good answer. That answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Right over here.
What is keeping you up at night in regards to what you're doing?
What's keeping you up at night? Shannon?
Really, value creation. If you're not doing something that absolutely is obvious to both the learner themselves, who, by the way, in the war for talent, it's a big deal, okay? If you don't understand how you are yourself getting better, if you don't understand how you're yourself getting better, you don't understand how you can contribute to the bottom line, and then for us be able to constantly forge ahead and be able to prove that almost daily with the purpose-value matchup, that's a retention tool, okay? That doesn't necessarily measure effective learning and then application, because it changes all the time, or the systems that you actually put people into, it's hard. So like our virtual reality learning, we teach our drivers, and you can YouTube it, it's pretty cool, by virtual reality, how to drive a truck, okay? And before we put them on your street with your children playing, okay? So with it, one of the things that we learned from a measurement standpoint is 30% of our people were getting motion sick in the VR headset. And we're like, uh-oh, so you never underestimate how your people can contribute. But the keeping up at night, there is such an overwhelming amount of training. You, in some cases, can't capture the value properly of the walk around the building with the person who knows it best. How do you capture that on a slide with ROI and value creation? I worry about that. Most of them anecdotally hear it and have that experience that I remind them of, typically when we get in the room, because they've been around a long time. But to do that in a succinct, cogent case, typically with some sort of accounting bias and methodology behind it, is very, very hard for us, because that's always under fire, especially when it's me and the training budget versus an aircraft purchase. How do you do that, you know?
Shannon, the good news is you guys collect a lot of data. And so data can kind of help you in that value analysis process.
Yeah.
So, yep. All right, got time for one last question. Right back here.
So at the beginning, we were talking about engagement scores and how you've kind of come to the realization that we need to keep those focus on those. Have you been able to connect or is there an understanding at the corporate level of the impact of improvement in engagement scores and other corporate performance metrics?
So the question is there a relationship between engagement scores and other corporate performance measurements?
Yeah, so the interesting thing for us is over the last 4 or 5 years of our, what we call our culture journey, which is really trying to drive this engagement in so many different things, our engagement went up 261% just in the last 3 years, which is dramatic. And we do, of course, an annual employee opinion survey. One of the things we noticed was the engagement was up, very specific, but people, and this goes back to what keeps you up at night too, the time for training, actually carving out the time and making sure people, they're very engaged in what we need to do. So they're very, but if you as a business cannot carve out that time for the training that's needed to propel you, and I'll give, for instance, SAP. We just launched SAP over every one of our facilities. We had it in some locations and others. Imagine the amount of retraining you've got to do for 9,500 employees specific to their jobs over and over and over. So, and carving out the time to be able to do that. We've come up with a solution to kind of carve that time out. The engagement level completely changed the way we managed our business, which shown on the bottom line. So you could see it really rapidly changing our bottom line. Same thing related to engineering. If you completely reskill your engineering specific to going from embedded software to Android-based software, that led us to these business award wins that we wouldn't have been able to get a year behind. So very specific engagement that affects the bottom line at the end of the day.
Shannon, I don't know if you're aware, 10 years ago we did some leadership development work for you guys.
Very good.
One of the things we discovered in that process is that you guys do employee engagement every year, and that you had a financial number tied to a 100th of a point increase or decrease in employee engagement. You guys still do that?
We do, and again, a lot of this is engineering the process. You get out a calendar and you say, when are we going to talk to our people on a formal level? How much data is really relevant, necessary, and we typically do more than that because we love the numbers. What sort of application do you have as far as driving all of those results to actually bringing it down to the field and your management team to do something with it? So yeah, we do that every fall. We moved a lot of the questions to a little bit more cultural piece because we figured out that if you don't have the right fit of folks and you're not equipping your people, they can't they're not capable of delivering the results you need in their way that's meaningful to the business because we're that big, okay? So, even we measure everything to the point of, it takes 1/100th of a second to get your hand from your pocket to the keys to put in your car. Okay, imagine doing that 200 times a day to 1,000 times a day, all the way up. Imagine now how much investment talking to your people, measuring their satisfaction on certain things, but also asking them how they can contribute back or how we can help them set a better stage for them to be engaged, content, and productive. Okay, that's a really big deal. And in some cases, does not have to be hard, does not have to be overcomplicated because it has to go down to the field level. But those numbers, very, very, very key to study every single year. And we still do that.
Great. Thank you, Shannon. Hope that we've actually run out of time. Hope that this was a valuable session. If you want the slides, just send me a note, info@rapidld.com. Thank you, guys.